There were 4 of us, George and William Samuel Harris, and myself, and Montmorency. We were sitting in my room smoking and talking about how bad we were. Bad from a medical point of view, I mean, of course. We were all feeling seedy, and we were getting quite nervous about it. Harris said he'd never felt such extraordinary fits of giddiness come over him at times, that he hardly knew what he was doing. And then George said that he had fits of giddiness too, and hardly knew what he was doing. With me, it was my liver that was out of order. I knew it was my liver that was out of order because I'd just been reading a patent liver pill circular in which we detailed the various symptoms by which a man could tell when his liver was out of order. I had them all. It is the most extraordinary thing, but I never read a patent medicine advertisement without being impelled to the conclusion that I am suffering from a particular disease therein dealt with in its most virulent form. That the diagnosis seems in every case to correspond exactly with all the sensations that I have ever felt. I remember going to the British Museum one day to read up the treatment for some slight ailment of which I had a touch. Hay fever, I fancy it was. I got down the book and read all I came to read. And then, in an unthinking moment, I idly turned the leaves and began to indolently study diseases generally. I forget which was the first distemper I plunged into, some fearful, devastating scourge, I know. And before I had glanced half down the list of premonitory symptoms, it was borne upon me that I had fairly got it. I sat for a while, frozen with horror, and then, in the listlessness of despair, I again turned over the pages. I came to typhoid fever, read the symptoms, discovered that I had typhoid fever. Must have had it for months without knowing it. Wondered what else I'd got. Turned up St. Vitus dance, found, as I expected, that I had that too. Began to get interested in my case and determined to sift it to the bottom, and so started alphabetically. I read up an org and learnt that I was sicking for it, and that the acute stage would commence in about another fortnight. Bright's disease, I was relieved to find, I only had in a modified form, and so far as that was concerned I might live for years. Cholera I had, with severe complications, and diphtheria I seemed to have been born with. I plodded conscientiously through the 26 letters, and the only malady I could conclude that I had not got was housemaid's knee. I felt rather hurt about this at first. It seemed somehow to be a sort of slight. Why hadn't I got housemaid's knee? Why this invidious reservation? After a while, however, less grasping feelings prevailed. I reflected that I had every other known malady in the pharmacology, and I grew less selfish, and determined to do without housemaid's knee. Gout, in its most malignant stage, it would appear, had seized me without my being aware of it, and zymosis I had evidently been suffering with from boyhood. There were no more diseases after zymosis, so I concluded there was nothing else the matter with me. I sat and pondered, and I thought what an interesting case I must be from a medical point of view, what an acquisition I should be to a class. Students would have no need to walk to the hospitals if they had me. I was a hospital in myself. All they would need to do would be walk around me, and after that, take their diploma. Then I wondered how long I had to live. I tried to examine myself. I felt my pulse. I couldn't feel any pulse at all. Then, all of a sudden, it seemed to start off. I pulled out my watch and timed it. I made 147 to the minute. I tried to feel my heart. I couldn't feel my heart. It had stopped beating. I've since been induced to come to the opinion that it must have been there all the time and must have been beating, but I cannot account for it. I patted myself all over my front, from what I call my waist up to my head, and went round a bit each side, a little way up the back, but I couldn't feel or hear anything. I tried to look at my tongue, stuck it out as far as it ever would go, and I shut one eye and tried to examine it with the other. I could only see the tip, and the only thing I could gain from that was to feel more certain than before that I had scarlet fever. I'd walked into that reading room a happy, healthy man, and I crawled out a decrepit wreck. I went to my medical man. He's an old chum of mine, and feels my pulse and licks my tongue and talks about the weather all for nothing when I fancy I'm ill, so I thought I would do him a good turn by going to him now. What a doctor wants, I said, is practice. you'll have me. He will get more practice out of me than out of 1,700 of your ordinary commonplace patients with only 1 or 2 diseases each. So I went straight up and saw him, and he said, "Well, what's the matter with you?" And I said, "I will not take up your time, dear boy, with telling you what is the matter with me. Life is brief. You might pass away before I've finished, but I will tell you what is not the matter with me. I have not got housemaid's knee. Why have I not got housemaid's knee? I cannot tell you, but the fact remains that I have not got it. Everything else, however, I have got." And I told him how I came to discover it all. Then he opened me and leaped down on me and clutched hold of my wrist, and he hit me over the chest when I wasn't expecting it, a cowardly thing to do, I thought, and immediately afterwards buffed me with the side of his head. After that, he sat down and wrote out a prescription, and folded it up and gave it to me. I put it in my pocket and went out. I didn't open it. I took it to the nearest chemist and handed it in. The man read it and then handed it back. He didn't keep it. I said, "You're a chemist?" He said, "I am a chemist. If I was a co-op store and a family hotel combined, I might be able to oblige you, but being only a chemist hampers me." I read the prescription. It ran, 1 pound beefsteak with 1 pint bitter beer every 6 hours, 1 10-mile walk every morning, 1 bed at 11 sharp every night, and don't stuff up your head with things you don't understand. I followed